Hello everyone, it's Annie and I'm here today with a special video for Pride Month. I am talking about my favorite underrated queer books. So I've talked obviously a lot about other queer books on my channel, and I just want to talk about the mostly 5-star, some 4-star books that I feel are criminally underrated here on Booktube and Book Talk, that I just think should get more attention, especially during June. So here we go. So the first book is Valiant Ladies by Melissa Gray. This is a historical mystery and it's a YA, and this was sent to me by the publisher, and I just absolutely loved it. It was sent unprompted. I didn't expect it, but I gave it 5 stars. Okay, it was so good, and this is really criminally underrated on Goodreads. I'm seeing like no one talk about this book here, and if you're looking for good sapphic reads, definitely check this one out, okay? So it follows Kiki and Anna, who are proper 17th century young ladies by day. But when night falls, they trade in their silks and lace for swords and muskets, venturing out into the vibrant, bustling, crime-ridden street of Potosi, in the Spanish Empire's viceroyalty of Peru. So this already has like a super interesting, unique setting. So, and I've never read a book set in colonial Peru. I just think it's a really interesting setting. So the girls pass their time fighting, gambling, and falling in love with each other, of course. But on the night of Kiki's engagement to the viceroy's son, her older brother, heir to her family's fortune, is murdered. So the girls immediately embark on a whirlwind investigation that takes them from the lowliest brothels to the highest echelons of the Spanish aristocracy. And yeah, it's really good. I really love the dichotomy between the two. One of them is going to marry the viceroyalty, the son, so she's rich, okay? And the other one, Anna, is poor, and that relationship between them comes into play during the story in a really well done way, very fleshed out. You could tell that the author has done a lot of research into this time period, into the city of Potosi, and I just loved it. It was great. 5 stars. The next book is Dauntless, which is a book that I will always champion. I love this book. This is a Filipino-inspired YA fantasy novel. And first of all, the cover is so eye-catching. I love the pinks. I just love how cool Seri, the main character, looks on the cover. So this is just awesome in every way possible. First of all, I love the world building. So Seri lives in this world where it's a lush, tropical rainforest, and there are these people, these warriors called Valorants, who hunt the beasts, these big mythical beasts that go around the jungle, terrorizing people, and the Valorants are the people who fight these beasts. So Seri has lived her life trying to become a Valorant. She's now an assistant to a higher ranking Valorant, and first of all, I love the world building. There's such interesting tidbits of culture. There's different languages. All of the characters have different backgrounds, and the Valorants have these pieces of armor that they make from the beasts that they kill that kind of mold to them and change color and depending on their personalities. And I think that that's really a cool bit of world building. So she's grown up thinking the beasts are evil, the Valorants are good. But of course, there's a bit of a gray area there that she has to learn about when she meets Sana, who can inexplicably communicate with the beasts. And as they grow closer, you know, things start to happen, and it was just so good. I had gotten this on NetGalley when it first came out, and I loved it so much. This is really not a YA fantasy to miss, and it has under 500 ratings on Goodreads. So it's really criminally underrated. So if you're watching this, please add it to your TBR. The next book is also YA. It is Funeral Girl. And this book has asexual representation and non-binary representation. So the main character is asexual and her best friend is non-binary. And this book is a YA contemporary. It's not so much a horror, but it does deal with ghosts. So the main character, Georgia Richter, which I think is a cool last name for the setting, her parents work at a funeral home. They own a funeral home, but she has a lot of anxiety about death and mortality. And she also has the added layer that whenever she touches a body, a dead body, she can summon the spirit of the person, so the ghost appears, and she has taken to trying to fulfill their last wish before she touches them again and they disappear. But one day, the body of one of her classmates arrives at her funeral home, and she has to help this boy fulfill his last wish and figure out how he died. And it's just so good. It's a really, really ambitious book, especially for YA, and I think that the way it deals with anxiety and grief and fear of death were really well done, especially for the age group. I love all the representation. I gave this book 4 stars just because I felt like the interpersonal relationships kind of got a little bit melodramatic. Even though it's YA, that happens sometimes, but I really loved this book overall, and this was just a book that I tend to keep thinking about, which is how I know that it's really good. And right now, at the time of filming, it only has 1,000 ratings, and the rating is pretty low, which I don't really understand. I think this book is beautiful, and you should definitely check it out. Okay, the next book is River Has Teeth, which is such a great YA novel. This is a horror. It is very Southern Gothic. It has those vibes, and I love them. They were done so, so well. The cover is just, I love it. It's beautiful. So this book follows Natasha, whose sister has gone missing. Her car was found on the side of the road, but she's nowhere to be found, and she feels like nobody is doing anything to help. And so she goes to Della, who is the daughter of this kind of infamous, disliked witch family who kind of lives on the outskirts of this town in a rundown house. And the people in the town know that if you need something, you go and get a potion from them, but it's like kind of frowned upon. So Della is going to help Natasha find her sister, but Della has her own things to hide because she believes she knows actually what took her sister, and she thinks that it's her mother who has been mysteriously transformed into a monster. And it's so good. I love how angry these girls both are. They have very different personalities, but they both have so much anger, and I just loved reading about it. I really love reading books about angry girls, and I just love how they come together and, of course, fall in love. It is sapphic, and I just love this book so much. I love these vibes, Southern Gothic, witchy, natural magic vibes. I just loved it, and a little bit of horror sprinkled in. It is a recipe for a book that I would love. So I gave it 5 stars, and you should read it. Okay, so the last YA book of this video is The Stars and the Blackness Between Them. So I know I've talked about this book quite a few times on my channel, but I still think it's underrated because it should be read by everyone. Okay, it has about 5,000 ratings on Goodreads, so not too bad, but it really deserves a whole lot more, so I just want to highlight it here. This is an incredibly bittersweet, sapphic love story between 2 girls, one of whom was caught with her girlfriend in her home country, and she is sent to live with her kind of estranged father who lives in Michigan, I believe, in the US. And she goes to live in Michigan with him. She's never seen snow, you know, so it's a big culture shock to her, but also she becomes friends with a girl who kind of lives next door, and that girl has something to hide. And this is a really, like I said, bittersweet book. I don't want to say anything more because I don't want to spoil it, but their love was so magical. Really magical. It's also very sad, so just be warned, and also if you're sensitive to anything, look up the content warnings because this is a very sad and tragic book, but it is just wonderful. Just a mostly contemporary, but a little bit of magical realism at the end there. It is so good, and I have not stopped thinking about it since I read this. This was an enthusiastic 5-star that way more people should be reading. Okay, so now for the adult books, we're starting with Phoenix Extravagant by Yoon-ha Lee. So everyone knows Yoon-ha Lee for Nine Fox Gambit, right? But not that many people have read Phoenix Extravagant. It only has under 3,000 ratings on Goodreads, and it really, really deserves more. Okay, first of all, we have a non-binary protagonist. I'm always looking for more books with that because there are so few of them and we need more. But first of all, this cover just tells you everything you need to know. I mean, there's mechanical dragons in this story. Do I need to say more? But I will. Okay, so this stars Gyen Jebi, who isn't a fighter or a subversive. They just want to paint. One day they're jobless and desperate. The next, Jebi finds themselves recruited by the Ministry of Armor to paint the mystical sigils that animate the occupying government's automaton soldiers. But when Jebi discovers the depths of the Razane government's horrifying crimes and the awful source of the magical pigments that they use, they find they can no longer stay out of politics. What they can do is steal Arazi, the ministry's mighty dragon automaton, and find a way to fight. So this book is, a fantasy / sci-fi-ish book set during a time period modeled off of the Japanese occupation of Korea. So I am very interested in that. I studied that in university. It was the subject of my thesis, which I've said many times. So that was just exactly what I needed. I mean, mechanical dragons, non-binary protagonist, and that setting in a fantasy book by Yoon-ha Lee. I mean, come on, more people need to read this. It was amazing. Okay, the second to last novel is a historical fiction novel called Daughters of the Deer by Danielle Daniel, and this was one of my favorite books of last year. It was one of the best books I've ever read, to be quite honest with you. It was so layered and so beautifully written, while at the same time being extremely tragic and sad, but also very necessary. So the author Danielle Daniel wrote this about her ancestors who lived in the Trois-Rivières region in Canada, and it follows an Algonquin woman named Marie, whose husband was killed and taken by an Iroquois raid, and her chief basically begs her to remarry for the sake of the tribe, and she ends up having to marry a white man, a French man who had come over, and I think he's a fur trapper or something, and they have a little girl together. And in Marie's culture, being gay is not frowned upon at all. It's considered normal, but the Frenchmen have another opinion because they're all Christian, and you get to see through Marie's eyes the how much the French take over their culture and how much their culture dies in such a short span of time. And that's really sad to read, but also what happens to their daughter, who does turn out to be lesbian, which is not really a spoiler. It wasn't revealed until like halfway through the book, but it's very obvious that is going to happen. It's just a very sad book, but it's really important for you to read. It is so special and just a crime that only 3,000 people have read it on Goodreads. I really need everyone to read this book. I think the reason why it's so underrated is because it's only been published in Canada so far. Like, I work at a library and I can't order it for my American library because it's not available. I'm hoping that it becomes available in America really soon, but until then, please read it. Read the Canadian version. It is so spectacular and very sad, but a 5-star read. Alright, last book for this video is Bluebird by C.L. Pierre-Loup, which is a sci-fi book, and it is so fun. Okay, so the tagline for this is lesbian gunslingers in space, and it's been compared to Cowboy Bebop, and it's just so much fun. It's such a great space adventure. So this follows Rig, and Rig is a rebel without a cause, and In this galaxy, there are three factions who are trying to control the galaxy, and Rig doesn't subscribe to any of them. She is independent, which is rare, until she gets a message from one of the factions that if she doesn't return what she stole from them, which is a secret, and no spoilers, if she doesn't return it, then her sister will die. Okay, they took her sister, so she has to go on this quest across the galaxy to try and save her sister, and she does it with the help of her librarian girlfriend, who I just love that dynamic. I love it so much. The world building and the characters and all the different aliens in this story are really cool, and it's just a really, really fun adventure that I was like, you have fun reading it. Like, yeah, there's stakes involved, but it's not like a depressing sci-fi story that sometimes they are, for a good reason sometimes, but this is just a really fun one. So at just over 1,000 ratings on Goodreads, I do think it's criminally underrated. I gave this 5 stars, and if you're looking for a new queer sci-fi, you should definitely check it out. Alright, so that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please let me know if there are any other LGBT books that you recommend me to read, especially if you think they are underrated. I would love to hear your recommendations, okay? So if you like this video, please like and subscribe to my channel for more bookish videos, and I'll see you next time. Bye!